In today's Locked On Pelicans, I'm going to tell you how New Orleans wasted a fantastic game from CJ McCollum, and there's more blame to go around than you may think. It's the Friday episode of Locked On Pelicans. Let's go.
You are Locked On Pelicans, your daily New Orleans Pelicans podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to another edition of Locked On Pelicans, the daily podcast covering your favorite team, the New Orleans Pelicans at NBA, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day, available wherever you get your podcasts and available on YouTube. I'm your host, Pelicans Insider, credential member of the media, Jake Madison, at NOLA Jake on Twitter. Here with y'all on this Friday, day after the Pelicans fall to the Sacramento Kings 109-111, losing at the very end where they can't even get a freaking shot off. Yeah, we're going to break down that final possession. Should Willie Green have called the timeout or not? But there's more to go around on that blame than you might think. And they wasted an opportunity to win a game and wasted a beautiful game from CJ McCollum. And Pelicans fans should be upset about this one, and I'll tell you why. Today's episode of Locked On Pelicans is brought to you by Robinhood Gold, which provides the privileges of a high net worth for any net worth. These generous benefits are now available for only $5 a month. The new gold standard is here with Robinhood Gold. Sign up at robinhood.com/gold. And of course, thank you for making Locked On Pelicans your first listen today and every day. We're here Monday through Friday, the #1 Pelicans podcast, covering everything you want to know about this Pelicans team. So please subscribe wherever you get your podcast. Join over 10,000 Pelicans fans on YouTube. And don't forget about the Locked On Pelicans newsletter. You can sign up over at lockedondaily.com and start your day with the all-new free Locked On Pelicans newsletter. All right, let's really get into this 109-111 loss, wasting a beautiful game from CJ McCollum. A game that you were in position to win. 36 points from CJ in this one. He was fantastic. We'll break his game down in the next segment here. Against a team that you've dominated for the better part of a year. In a season where wins are going to be tough to come by, and that's where we are with this Pelican season, you've got to get this one. You do. Adding one win to your total isn't going to matter at the end of the season, but it would make everyone feel good here. But the Pelicans were unbelievably wasteful in this game. We can point to a couple of stats first. 17 turnovers. 17 turnovers. This has been a problem all season long. And when you look at some of this, they're just dumb, lazy passes. This is not the Sacramento Kings having an elite defense and then New Orleans really struggling like it was with OKC. And even then, some of those were really not OKC forcing it. It was the Pelicans just being lazy here. Sacramento is now 13-13. They're not particularly good. Their defensive rating is barely in the top half of the league. They are not an elite defensive team. And you made them look like that. Unbelievably disappointing to make some of those plays, make some of those turnovers. And it's summed up on the final possession. You're down 2, you have a chance to tie or take the lead, and you have a scorching hot CJ McCollum. The Sacramento Kings miss. And look, it was not the correct time to immediately take a time out right there. I actually mean that. It was not. But you should have taken a timeout later when DeJounte Murray ran into complete trouble basically right at the end of the game. That is when it was time to take a turnover in what you needed to do. And they did not do that. And that is unbelievably disappointing on the final possession that it just gets kind of run out that way. That is not how this game should have ended for New Orleans, but it is how it did. Just due to, I don't know. When you realize he drove and ran into trouble, at that point in time, it's probably where you need to go and try and get some help. They didn't even call that a turnover. They're calling that a missed shot for DeJounte Murray. I'm really, are you sure about that? But basically just loses the ball here, right? Goes into trouble, gets trapped, and the ball, they're calling it a block instead of a turnover, so it's a missed shot here. Same thing. When he was in trouble there, then you take the time out, and they didn't do that. Look, the Pelicans have been terrible after timeouts this season. Repeatedly, they have not scored and done anything. But right here, I'm looking at it. 6.9 seconds. Call the timeout there. It's actually not there. It's really with 6 seconds left when he has 2 people on him. It's exactly at 6 seconds. I'm looking at it here. That's when you take the timeout. And 6 seconds, look, that's not ideal to try and draw up a play or anything like that. So I don't know if it actually would have gone well. Would have been better than him being doubled and having nowhere to go with the ball. Now, the Pelicans, again, are bad after timeouts. So when you got the rebound and after they missed that shot, no, don't take one. Let them try and run in transition or semi-transition a little bit and try and get an easier scoring opportunity like that. I agree with that. But it's 6 seconds, take one. Pelicans go home with 2 timeouts left. Was there an opportunity to use those? Yeah, probably, right? Murray had 8 turnovers, really 9 on the night if you're counting this one. And you don't even get a shot off to at least try and tie or win the game. Allowing the Sacramento Kings to just dribble the game out. It's terrible here. Waste fighting back from 14 down. The other stat here that I think is really bad in this game is second chance points. We knew this was going to be a bit of a problem for New Orleans this season, but the Sacramento Kings had 18, I think it was, offensive rebounds here in this game. 18 offensive rebounds with Domantas Sabonis getting 6 of them himself, Keegan Murray getting 5 of them, and De'Aaron Fox they took one away. It's 17 offensive rebounds here for 20 second chance points. 21. New Orleans lost this game by 2. They were outscored in terms of second chance points 21-10. You got to figure something out when it comes to rebounding. You have to. So many possessions where Sacramento had multiple chances for second chance points, whether those just slap outs, tip outs, things like that. Truthfully, I think that number probably is higher. The stat keeping seems a little off in this one to me. But it's a problem. Maybe you don't have the bodies. Try to team rebound. Make a tweak and an adjustment. And are you seeing tweaks and adjustments this season from the team? No, you're not. That's what makes this so frustrating. A game you should win against a team that you knew wanted to beat you and was going to come in trying their best to beat you. And you let them off. You know, it's the you play to win the game, we let them off the hook kind of thing. It's an unbelievably disappointing loss. And when wins are going to be tough to get by, make the fans happy. More on the fans in the third segment. By closing this one out, just freaking do it. Just do it. And it's mistakes we have seen repeated and repeated and repeated. And that's not great. That doesn't feel good here, right? Look, it's kind of summed up by Trey Murphy. You know, he was tremendous in the first quarter here. Tremendous, just cooking the Sacramento Kings. He had 16 points in the first quarter on 5 of 7 shooting, 3 of 5 from deep. The rest of the way was almost a non-factor. 2 shots in the second quarter. In the second half, he was just 1 of 4. He took 6 shots the rest of the way. Look, the Sacramento Kings were keen in on him, and that's one of the reasons why CJ was able to really go off in the second half for 24 points with some of the space provided to him from that. Same with DeJounte Murray to an extent. You've got to find ways to get him more involved. You have to find ways to get him more involved. Look, Willie Green in the past has says, I don't really call plays for Trey. Why not when it comes to all this? What are we doing here? I don't have an answer for you on that. I'm supposed to be the guy with the answers. It's disappointing because CJ McCollum was awesome, but the Pelicans wasted this. They at least get the shot off. At least get the shot off. They're not going to make a coaching. It doesn't feel like they're going to make a coaching change midseason, but there need to be real questions asked in the offseason about all of this because, look at it. Look at it. Show me what's changed, what's been different, what growth has been. I'm not even talking about moral victories. There were things you could see that if you tweaked a little bit, you could improve, and I don't feel like the team has done that. And that's wasteful, disappointing. Let's talk about CJ McCollum next. This is important for a variety of reasons. I want to break that down. That's coming up here next in today's episode of Locked On Pelicans. Today's episode of Locked On Pelicans is brought to you by Robinhood Gold. With Robinhood Gold, you don't need a silver spoon to eat up the financial favors of the 1%. Robinhood Gold allows others to get the rates and perks usually reserved for high society. Now, the resourceful individual with Robinhood Gold can earn the very liberal rate of 4.25% APY on uninvested cash and be rewarded with a handsome 3% retirement boost on IRA account contributions. Robinhood Gold provides the privileges of a high net worth for any net worth. These generous benefits are now available for only $5 a month. month. The new gold standard is here with Robinhood Gold. Sign up at robinhood.com/gold. Terms apply. For specific product disclosures, visit robinhood.com/gold. Investing involves risk. Rate may change. Gold membership is offered by Robinhood Gold LLC. And thank you for making Locked On Pelicans your first listen today and every day. We're here Monday through Friday, the number one Pelicans podcast covering everything you want to know about this Pelicans team. So please subscribe wherever you get your podcast. Don't forget about the Locked On Pelicans daily newsletter over at lockedondaily.com. Scroll down. Do you see the Locked On Pelicans logo? Click on it. Shout out to everyone who, not tons of y'all, we'll talk about that in the next segment, that were there in the Smoothie King Center who said hi. It's awesome to, look, the people who show up being that passionate, I love. And also, if you don't want to be there, I totally get it, and I don't blame you whatsoever. It's cold out. But passionate fans are still there. People do still care about this team, and I love to see that. You can get more Locked On Pelicans in your inbox Monday through Friday by signing up over at lockedondaily.com. Really great league-wide coverage in there as well. It's not long. Take you like 2 minutes to read every single day. So let's get into the performance from CJ McCollum, because honestly, he was awesome in this game. CJ was just freaking good, y'all. This was a phenomenal game from him here. Just like you would call this a vintage CJ McCollum game. First and foremost was the 3-point shooting. You need to hit your threes. You need to knock them down. Pelicans took 37. It's close to 40. CJ McCollum was 6 of 11 from 3, 36 points. 3 rebounds, 3 assists, just 2 turnovers, which is pretty incredible too when you look at it. Again, he was fantastic, and the Pelicans wasted this performance from him. Now, maybe this raises up his trade value. Certainly should, because he showed you he still got it all, and you saw everything in his bag in this game. He really, again, the shooting was great. You saw him take some heat checks and make them too. And he was scorching hot in the fourth quarter, doing everything he could to get this Pelicans team a win. 17 points in the fourth. He almost outscored the entire Sacramento Kings. They had 20 in the fourth. He had 17 by himself. It would have been wonderful to see him at least get a shot attempt off for the win or to tie at the very end. And yeah, you can say they should have taken a timeout with 6 seconds left. Though again, that does limit you on what you're capable of doing. If you're looking at a catch and shoot kind of situation or rushing a shot, Sacramento knows that it's easier to defend. I don't know, we can look at the end result here and be like, yeah, that should have been the case, but you get what I'm saying. I think it's kind of, this team can't do it. Is kind of what we're seeing, I think, when it comes to all of that. But not just the 3-point shooting, right? CJ was 6 of 11 there, but he was then, that puts him at 8, I'm going to do the math right now, of 13 from inside the 3-point line. It's really good efficiency. You saw him do kind of everything. Layups at the rim, he had 3 of those. You need to see those little floaters, runners from him getting in the lane and using the glass. He can do that too. And ones on the foul shots with those. Yes, it was just the crafty veteran out there doing everything. He only took 1 shot outside of the paint in this game. And even when you look at the paint shots, nothing was near the free throw line. Overall, this is a really good shot profile for him. Not for everybody else, but for him, this is actually really good, and he was highly efficient in this. Look, this is the type of game that people around the league are definitely going to look at and go like, oh, he still has it. He was also phenomenal last year, very underrated for this Pelicans team, and they're chasing getting into the postseason. Didn't do particularly well in the postseason, but he's supposed to be your 3rd, maybe 4th guy when it comes down to it. And he's had to be 1 or 2 far too long. Last year, 20 points per game. Since he's been in New Orleans, that is what he's averaged. 20 points per game on 43% shooting from 3, 8 attempts per game. He's been really good. This year, 20.3 points per game. Again, the points he had in this one were what kept New Orleans going. And being able to do it in a variety of different ways, not just being a 3-point specialist. You can't just be one-dimensional if you're going to get kind of the money that he's getting. And he wasn't in this one. Using the glass, layups, just the craftiness with it all. Vintage CJ McCollum. I just recorded our Locked On NBA Game Night show with Gavin Shaw of Locked On Knicks, and he was like in awe of CJ McCollum and loved what you got to see from him in this one. If you like hoops, this was a fun performance from CJ. Now, you'd like to see this a little bit more consistently, but maybe CJ is finding a groove here, and this is a game that he can build on. And all that is to say, maybe that raises his trade value. That's what we're kind of looking at here this season when it comes down to it. They need to make a decision. They got to do something, right? Does Ingram have a ton of value? I do not know. The plan right now is to keep Zion unless someone comes in and blows you away with an offer for him, but I don't think anyone's really going to do that. I did have someone ask me the question of, like, because his contract is voidable, does that maybe mean another team is more likely to take on the risk? Let's trade some, not too much for him. Bring him in. If it doesn't work, we're not like stuck with his contract. We can just waive him. Yes and no, right? Like, yeah, it gives you a little bit of insurance, but no one still wants to do that. That's admitting a loss in the trade, and front offices don't really think like that. So I'm not entirely sure if that's the case or not. So that's a little bit weird, and we'll see. I still don't think they move him. But Ingram, again, there's been no resolution on that. There's no reason to think there will be resolution on that necessarily. So if that's going to be the case, again, CJ's the odd man out. I've been predicting this for a while for the everydayers and the longtime listeners of the show. I was in the summer saying this sort of thing. And I think that still could be the case in a game like this. Can kind of showcase what he can bring you and what you might need. And so trying to find a suitor for him could be tough. Maybe the Miami Heat, if they end up moving Jimmy Butler, because they don't want to give Butler a long-term contract. But after this, CJ's deal becomes a little bit easier to try and think about and take on and what you want to do with him in the future. It's one more year at $30 million. You can get out from under that in a year. That maybe is a big important factor for other teams. So maybe the Miami Heat want to be good for 2 more years. Then it's like, yeah, we need to let everyone go and we're going to completely rebuild. It's probably what they should do. Because signing Jimmy Butler long-term, I don't know if is actually the answer. We talked more about that on Locked On NBA too. Make that your second listen today. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. So him showcasing that he's multi-dimensional and everything that he can do, I do think is a really important thing. Defensively, no, he's not there. But if you put him on the right team or in the right kind of culture, I think he can be a really, really useful player here. And hopefully that means New Orleans can get a good return. The salary cap situation is not great. We've been talking about this for a couple of years. I was the only person that was like, they're not going to trade Jackson Hayes. They're just going to let him walk. That's what they did because of the salary cap. They couldn't bring $7 million more back in on salary onto the roster that they would have been dealing with like last year when it came to that. That would have been a horrible situation for them. So that's a very realistic thing that we've got to look at and talk about here, and we do on Locked On Pelicans. But CJ putting on this performance should be eye-opening to teams around the league. It also, what's also so frustrating about this is like what could have been. Look at that. Like, look at the game he just had. It was awesome. He could do that with Zion. He could do that with Ingram, lesser version of that. But when they're having off nights, he's ready to step up and contribute. In theory, he and DeJounte Murray, with the defense that DeJounte is supposed to provide, should be pretty great. And I thought Murray was pretty good defensively in this one, a steal and 2 blocks. 20 points, not on efficient shooting, 8 of 19 and 2 of 7 from 3. 7 rebounds, 9 assists, though, right? Like, he's not far off from a triple-double there. By the way, if you want to see a hilarious triple-double, go look at the stats for RJ Barrett in their loss to the Miami Heat. Probably the most useless triple-double I've ever seen. That backcourt seems like it should make a lot of sense. And we're just, it's a glimpse of like what could have been, but we're never going to see it. Right? Maybe we will this season, but it won't matter because that's not going to be the long-term pieces on this team unless they figure something else out, and I don't really know what that is. And just kind of, it's like the lament when it comes to that of what could have been and how things could have gone, and it's really disappointing to be able to see that. So there you go, CJ McCollum. I want to talk about the Smoothie King Center and the attendance there tonight. Were you there? Probably not, because there weren't a whole lot of folks. Let's talk about that coming up here next in today's episode of Locked On Pelicans. Today's episode of Locked On Pelicans is brought to you by FanDuel. Get ready to take on all the NFL and NBA action this season with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Because right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL and NBA all in one place. Those lines are always updating. So if there's an injury, or maybe you see momentum's kind of shifting a certain way, the Pelicans getting back in that game, So when you get the hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats of you live play-by-play and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. And you can just visit FanDuel.com and join today. And you're going to get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet, and that's over at FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. And thank you for making Locked On Pelicans your first listen today and every day. We're here Monday through Friday, the #1 Pelicans podcast, covering everything you want to know about this Pelicans team. So please subscribe wherever you get your podcast. Join over 10,000 Pelicans fans on YouTube as well. And make Locked On Saints your second listen today. Jake Hayner, that Jake, not me, Jake, starting for the Saints on Sunday. I'm excited to get a look at something different. Ross Jackson's breaking down what you should expect to see from the quarterback. Let's call it situation. I say that for a reason. Over at the Locked On Saints podcast, everything black and gold from Ross Jackson, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Make that your second listen today. So let's talk about not the game. 111-109. Just what a wasteful game. Domantas Sabonis was a problem for New Orleans all game long, near 40-20 in this one. This game was obviously not going to be well attended. Like, it was pretty clear that was going to be the case. The Pelicans have a rough record. Zion, Ingram aren't playing. They've just been bad. They're now 5-21. The second worst record in the league here, and it doesn't look like they're winning games anytime soon. New Orleans has lost 3 in a row. They're 1-9 in their last 10. This is green if you go to tankathon.com because that means you're bad. People showing up on a pretty cold Thursday night when you have the high school playoff games, in the Superdome next door, making parking and it just kind of a nightmare being down there. Just in terms of, it was fun being down there when you look at some of the crowds and the people really being into everything, but just trying to get there was a bit of a pain. And I understand why people wouldn't want to go. This game was not well attended. And I don't like talking about this because I don't want it to seem like I'm like crapping on the team or kicking them while they're down, but it's just a matter of fact that this game was not well attended. Nor would you expect it to be. Usually also those games when there are football games going on, like high school football playoff games in the Superdome, like tend to not be well attended because everyone kind of gets the pain of just the logistics of getting in and out. But this was particularly bad. The upper bowl was virtually empty. Probably less than 1,000 people up there. Probably less than 500 people, truthfully, up there. The lower bowl was awful looking. I didn't watch. I was there in person. I didn't watch this one on TV, but I'm sure you could see the shots if they had them, and it did not look good. I don't think this is the norm going forward of what we saw in this game, but I do think attendance is going to be lacking in the foreseeable future because one of the things that I think is important for content creators, is just a tip, kind of an insight into my process here, is you've got to look for positives and kind of look for hope. If I go, this team sucks and it's not going to change, there's nothing worth watching, right? If I come on and be like, I haven't watched the games in a while, why the heck would you listen to Locked On Pelicans? Why would you? I just told you don't. I don't even watch the games. Why would you listen to my show then, right? But also, if I'm like, things are never going to get better, why I'm telling you, don't care about this team. Why would you listen to me, right? So we'll look for silver linings. We'll look for positives. Eve Misi being really probably the biggest one this season, and look at how things will change and how this can get interesting. And those sorts of things are important to look at. Coming on here just being like, they suck, doesn't accomplish anything. Doesn't do anything for you as a fan either. People don't have a ton of hope around this team right now. Like, people are definitely done with Zion and Ingram. Let me know in the comments down below if you are. I see him. Don't worry. I know. Right? That's the general feeling here of selling the idea of hope as, well, Zion will be healthy next year and we'll be good and be competitive. Like, no one's buying that. Right? Even if that's going to be the case or could be true, no one's buying that right now. So looking for kind of the hope with this is tough. And if people don't have that, they're going to not go to games. They're going to not watch it on TV. They'll probably stop listening here in other places, even if we're giving you reasons to listen. Even the show's good. You get what I mean. So they need to figure out what that is. And I don't mean like me, but like the team needs to. Winning against Sacramento would have felt really good. And I would have opened the show probably laughing hysterically. And I mean that of like the Kings can't even beat this version of the Pelicans. Let's all enjoy that because that's funny and it's fun. And we like that. But if you can't even get that win, right? They need to figure out where the hope is and start showing that. Otherwise, the attendance is going to go down, would be my guess. And look, sometimes you don't just go to a game because you want to see a team win. Sometimes just let's go, and tickets are cheap. And I think cheap tickets are a good thing. And it's still fun to go to basketball games, to be in the atmosphere, to yell, and to kind of be in the moment of the game, even if you know they're probably going to lose. But that doesn't work for everybody, and that's fine. People's money matters. And the team really has not delivered on the value proposition of that, in my opinion, by losing. I think everything else is all right there. They're going to need to figure some of that out. And we're going to help them. We'll probably do a show next week on like, here's what the team needs to do to kind of keep fans invested and involved and do right by the fans. And I have some ideas for them, and we'll lay them out. It's going to involve money and other things too. I'm looking forward to doing that show. So I would expect some weird crowds at the Smoothie King Center in the foreseeable future. There's a 5-game homestand coming up over the holidays. People are in town for the holidays. Maybe that gives you a boost. I don't think it will look like it did on Thursday night normally, but I don't think you're going to see like sellouts and things like that. And when certain teams come to town, you got to wonder if it's going to be more fans for those teams, you know who I'm talking about, than New Orleans. And that's always a little bit disappointing to see when it comes to that. So I'm hopeful that we'll see some things be a little bit different in the future when it comes to that, but I'm not entirely sure if that'll end up being the case, and I guess we'll find out. But look, I understand it's rough if you're a Pelicans fan. Are you still invested? What are you looking forward to? What's keeping you watching this team? Let me know in the comments down below. I'm actually genuinely curious, and that feedback will probably make it into a show that we're going to do next week, talking about the Pelicans and what they need to do for the fans. So that's something to come next week here on Locked On Pelicans, taking on the Indiana Pacers on Sunday. Sunday's a big day. If you want to know why, give yesterday's show a listen. And that's going to do it for this episode of Locked On Pelicans. This week at Locked On Pelicans, as always, I'm your host, Jake Madison, at NOLA Jake on Twitter. And I'll be back with y'all on Monday.